Gorakuganya gana gocha goloruharam Goranga gudatama gopyada kopa briksham Gopala gada ratidam yati singha gora govinda deshi kavaram Satatam namam Gorakuganya gana gocha goloruharam Dhamma adhamma kichuna bachila jachiya dile kakola kahe premananda himona goranga hridaya dadiya bola pacha goranga kaha goranga Laha Gorangera Namare Jai Jana Goranga Bhaje Se Hoyamara Pranare Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Yashaiva Padambu Jabhakti Labhya Prema-bhakti-candrika Padama Pramata Tasmai Jagannamangala Mangalaya Chaitanya Chandraya Namo Namaste Chaitanya Chandraya Namo Namaste Chaitanya Chandraya Namo Namaste Madgavirapi Gopala Sri Kriyat Kripaya Jari Tadaiva Sambhaya Pidva Rishigustat Priya Janaha Shri Krishna Krishna Chaitanya Sasanatana Rupaka Gopala Raghunathabda Brajabala Bapahimam Pancha Kalpatarubhishcha Kripa Sindhu Vyayevacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. So we can recite this prayer to Narottam Das Thakur by Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur from the Narottam Prabhu-ashtakam. Shri Krishna Namamrita Vaishivaktra Chandra Prabhadvasta Tamo Baraya Gauranga Deva Anucharaya Tasmai Namo Nama Shri Narottamaya. Again and again, I offer my obeisances unto Srila Narottam Das Thakur. He is a true follower of Lord Gauranga Dev. The nectarian shower of the holy name of Krishna, radiating from the moon of his mouth, destroys the darkness of ignorance. So we're reading from Prema-bhakti-candrika. This is our third session, is that right? Fourth session on the third verse of the second chapter, called chapter in Prema-bhakti-candrika. Go ahead and put this verse on the board here too. So, Asat-sanga Sadatyag Chada Anya Gita Rag Karmi Gyani Pari Hari Dure Kevala Bhakata Shanga Prema-kata Rasa Ranga Lila Kata Braja Rasa Pure. So we spoke something a few sessions ago about Asat-sanga and about how in Chaitanya Charitamrita there's two types of Asat-sanga: women and persons who are non-devotees, persons attached to women. And we spoke something about how the Bhagavatam is not against women. That means, and then in our last session we spoke about what the Sangha actually mean. So I'm going to touch on some of the other points a little briefly. Chada Anya Gita Rag, we should leave different attachment. Gita Rag, Rag means attachment, for different types of songs. And just focus on songs for Krishna. In fact, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur and our other acharyas encouraged us to be attached to kirtan for the sake of Krishna. Sometimes devotees, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta says in one lecture, one letter, that because people are attached to mundane music, then we should have some expert musicians doing kirtan. But that's to attract outside people. For himself, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta also had the habit of engaging people who were not musical. In fact, they would maybe sing out of key or whatever, doing kirtan, just to establish the fact that what's the most important is the bhav, is the feeling that's given into the kirtan. At the same time, we appreciate and we see in the lives of our acharyas, one reason why Narottam Das Thakur was appreciated was he was a very good musician, and he surrounded himself with good musicians. And we hear in the lives of Nanda Maharaj and so many different devotees how respect was given to the musicians. Musicians are important personalities, but we should want to have music for the pleasure of Krishna, and we should give up any other attachment for other songs for our own personal pleasure. Karmi Gyani Parihari Dure, we should give up association with Hare Krishna Natalia, nice to see you. We should reject association with keeping it far, far away of the karmis and gyanis. In Bhaktivinoda Thakur, when we were speaking about Sangha, what does it mean? He explained that it's not just physical association. A grihastha will have to associate with non-devotees sometimes. Devotees in our movement sometimes have to associate with persons who are not so pure, not so appropriate always as devotees, but we associate with them for the sake of the society, for the sake of Prabhupada's mission. But we don't associate with them in the heart. And we heard the story in our last session, something about Gadadhar Pandit and how Vallabhacharya was pressurizing him. He forced him to hear his commentary in the Bhagavatam. And Gadadhar Pandit couldn't go anywhere. So he checked out, as we might say in American English, he checked out in his heart and mind. And although physically he was there, he wasn't there with his heart and mind. And that's a very, very important point. We find many times in our Gaudiya literatures, we hear about great personalities who, like Bhishmadev, who are, quote, on the wrong side. He's fighting on behalf of Duryodhana, but actually he's a great devotee of Krishna. And the greatest example, of course, is Srimati Radharani. And she's living with Jatila and Kutila, who are very much against Krishna. It seems like she's on the wrong team, but she's not. It's not just a question of physical association, it's a question of associating in the heart. So now Narottam goes on, Kevala Bhakata Sangha, we should just only associate with devotees. But what does that Bhakata Sangha mean? It means that we want to hear Krishna-katha, and in particular, Prema-bhakti-candrika rasa ranga. We want to hear about Prema-bhakti rasa and the ranga, the happiness or the play that goes on in that. We want to relish that Prema-katha. It reminds me of a comment that my Guru Maharaj gave to me once, which probably all of you may have heard, but we had some idea in 1994, I think it was, before, yeah, it must have been 94, when Guru Maharaj was coming to America, that we would organize different talks and advertise them. So I sent a list to Guru Maharaj by fax. There was no email at that time. Sent him a list by fax and asked him to approve this topic. And he wrote me back and he said, there's no need to make special subjects. He said, I'll speak according to the situation. And he said, in any way, I only speak about one subject as anyway, which is Krishna Prema. So that actually, Narottam Das Thakur is speaking here. This is our only katha. We want to hear about Krishna Prema. But honestly, many people don't have taste for that. And even if you start to speak to them about that, they become very nervous. And they'll quote things from Srila Prabhupada, where Prabhupada said that we should just work hard now, work now and samadhi later. But it doesn't mean we shouldn't read Krishna book. It doesn't mean we shouldn't understand something about Krishna Prema. So, Kevala Bhakata Sangha, we should only associate with devotees, Kevala only, or Kevala Bhakata Sangha, we should only associate with devotees by Prema-katha rasa ranga, lila-katha braja rasa puri. We should be absorbed in Prema-katha and lila-katha about Braj. This is the only association that we want to have with devotees. This is what it means to associate with devotees. In a recent class we had, maybe it was with this group, I don't know, I was speaking something about my Guru Maharaj and how once one of his godbrothers who was friendly with him was speaking. Guru Maharaj was saying how I don't have any association. And they mentioned this, what was his name? I met him once or twice. There was one Babaji who used to come to visit Guru Maharaj. He's a disciple of Srila Bhakti-siddhanta. He liked Guru Maharaj very, very much. And so they mentioned him. What about this devotee? He's so nice, and he's a very advanced devotee. He has disciples and things. And Guru Maharaj said, yes, he's nice, but he's a Ram Bhakta. He said, I want association with a Krishna Bhakta. So that's what it means to associate. In the Chaitanya Charitamrita in Madhya Lila chapter 8, Mahaprabhu is speaking to Ramananda Roy, and he encourages him to come to Jagannath Puri in a beautiful way. He tells him this. He says that Nila Chali Tumiyami Taki Be Eka Shange Shuke Gani Ibat Kala Krishna-katha Range. He said, you and I, you should come to Jagannath Puri, and we'll sit in some quiet place, and we'll just have hari-katha. I spoke, actually, he came to our house, the Mahant of the Jagannath Vallabha Gardens, which is one of the most prestigious or important places connected with Jagannath in Puri. And I was asking him some questions about the tradition and things there. And one of the things that he said to me, which I found very interesting, he said that in relationship to this verse, which we just read from Madhya Lila, he said that Ramananda Roy, he came to Jagannath Puri, and he and Mahaprabhu stayed in the place which is now Jagannath Vallabha Gardens. And Mahaprabhu gave Ramananda Roy the worship of the deity of Krishna Gopal, who's still there today. It's a four-handed deity of Krishna with two hands holding a flute and two hands holding a shankha and chakra. Very extraordinary deity, which we sometimes speak about. I won't go in that direction right now. But he told me that according to the tradition, they just locked themselves up in a room. I forget what he said, for a few weeks or something, and they just composed the Jagannath Vallabha Natakam, a drama which is written by Ramananda Roy, which, according to the tradition there, it was done with Mahaprabhu at Jagannath Vallabha Gardens, locked up in a room together. So this is the mood of the devotees Mahaprabhu was teaching us. He's telling Ramananda Roy is such a devotee who can actually speak hari-katha with, that you should come. We'll stay together in Jagannath Puri. We'll spend all of our time talking about Krishna and his pastimes. So in our last session, we spoke about a lot about upeksha and neglect, and how this is very important for the Madhyamadikari. And ultimately, neglect doesn't just mean that somebody's a nasty person, so we stay away from them. If they're in need of food or shelter or clothing or something, we may help them. But neglect means that we don't speak hari-katha with them if they're envious. And that's a very, very deep and important point. So this is the essence of Sangha. The essence of Sangha means to have Krishna-katha. That's the most important principle of our movement. And there's many statements from Srila Prabhupada in this regard. Let me put some on the screen here. Leela Purushottam, would you like to start reading?
Yes. Srila Prabhupada in his introduction to Krishna book. It is essential for persons who are actually liberated to hear about the pastimes of Krishna. That is the supreme relishable subject matter for one in a liberated state. Also, if persons who are trying to be liberated hear such narrations, then their path of liberation becomes very clear. Lord Chaitanya has therefore advised his followers that their business is to propagate Krishna-katha.
This is the essence of our movement. I've been having some discussion recently with some devotees online. It's hurting my heart seeing what devotees are saying about ISKCON. And I have no interest, to be frank, to defend ISKCON. But what I'm concerned about is defending the chanting of the holy name and hari-katha, which many devotees are taking shelter of ISKCON for. And I want to encourage them that everything is fine with that. And I've been finding that many of the angry kind of devotees, they're speaking about the corporate ISKCON. They keep speaking about, and I finally just told them, I said, I'm not interested in the corporate ISKCON. I want the Krishna-katha ISKCON. And who cares about the corporate ISKCON? So one of them told me, you don't understand me. I said, no, because I said, you're not Krishna conscious. Excuse me, you're Kali conscious. He's just always speaking about Kali this and Kali that. I want to be Krishna conscious. It's a simple thing. This is the purpose of this movement. Why don't you go ahead with from teaching to Lord Kapila Dev.
We have to establish this Krishna. We have established this Krishna consciousness movement in order to avoid Sadhu-sanga, association with those who are interested in material things. Because we are associating with Krishna, we do not wish to talk about anything but Krishna. Everyone is interested in this business or that, and we are exclusively interested in our Krishna consciousness business.
So people say, well, but we should speak about Varnashram Dharma. That's okay. I wouldn't mind knowing about gardening, some better things, or how to build a house, or this or that. And I might even take some classes and something like that. But that's not the purpose of our movement. That's not how we associate with devotees, by just having kathas like that. That's very depressing, actually, if things degrade to that point. Somebody's made a comment here. Ujjwala Rashig. I said, I don't want to be Kali conscious, I want to be Krishna conscious. Thank you, Ujjwala. Hare Krishna. So, Leela Purushottam, you want to read some more?
Yes. If we actually want to become pious and develop our devotional life, we have to associate unflinchingly with the sadhu. Then we can acquire some taste for Krishna. When we discuss Krishna with the sadhu, the discussion becomes very pleasing and we develop some taste, which is called rasa or mellow. When we discuss among devotees, Krishna-katha is pleasing to the heart and ear. This requires a little training, and this training is given by the devotees. We should follow the devotees in their practical daily life, in their routine work and behavior. Cultivation means practice, and the great acharyas has given a routine we can cultivate.
So if we don't cultivate this, if we don't try to associate with more advanced devotees, how are we going to make advancement at all? It's such an important principle in Krishna consciousness. Let's see. Many statements from Srila Prabhupada I have about this. We can read one or two more. About we're sitting here together.
We are sitting here together and we are talking about Krishna. Our Krishna consciousness movement is especially meant for talking about Krishna, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's mission. It's
that's what we do. That's what the devotees come together for. And if we don't do that, and we come together and we talk about management, or worse yet, we come together and we talk about politics, or even worse than that, we talk about bodily things and we speak about how women are not good, or Americans are not good. This is that. We become so contaminated by that, and it just disturbs this mission. It's such an important thing. This is our service. This is how to keep Srila Prabhupada's mission alive. Let's see. Why don't you read the next two? These next two are really good.
Still me?
Yeah, go ahead. Or actually, maybe Tirthakar Prabhu, are you there?
I am here, but I cannot read, Prabhu, because I'm doing something. I'm sorry.
That's okay. Natalia, you be able to read? Okay.
I can read, no problem.
Yeah, go ahead.
It's Srimad Bhagavatam 4744 purport. Lord Chaitanya advocated a process whereby everyone may remain in his present position without change, but simply hear from the proper authoritative source about Krishna. Lord Chaitanya advised everyone to spread the word of Krishna. He advised, all of you become spiritual masters. Your duty is simply to talk to whomever you meet of Krishna or of the instructions given by Krishna.
Now, this is an interesting thing too. Prabhupada's defining here what it means to be guru. It's an interesting thing to me because through our different particular perspectives that we have, we see the world in different ways. We see guru in different ways. We see the movement in different ways. And for some people, it's given in hari-bhakti-vilas. For some people, guru should be somebody who has good teeth. And guru should be like this, and some people we may be told that women can't be guru because they have some bodily problem with that. But here Prabhupada is giving a very simple definition. He's not speaking about Diksha, he's not speaking about anything in connection with the Hare Krishna movement even, except that we should speak about Krishna. That's what guru means, and everybody should become a guru in that sense. And the next thing from CC, Madhya Lila, chapter 3.
Express here some concern or doubt.
Yeah.
Because these statements, they come out like quite black and white in a sense. You know, like Srila Prabhupada is saying, you only speak about Krishna. You only hear about Krishna. And here again, the similar I don't want to say mentality, but similar attitude is expressed like, whomever you meet, you tell him about Krishna. I can't imagine it actually. I mean, I can in the part of like choosing what do I receive, I can relate to it that it's part of my responsibility and level of absorption and like that. But even there, I can't really say that I only consume Krishna conscious topics and like that. Maybe we are used to filter it in the Krishna conscious way, that whatever we come in contact with, we anyway try to see it in a Krishna conscious way. But it's not exactly that I'm, you know, like 16 hours a day absorbed in Krishna-katha, in direct Krishna-katha. So that would be like one thing, but still there I can understand like it's more or less personal responsibility. How do I work on my absorption? But the second part, whomever you meet, you'll tell him about Krishna. I just can't imagine it. How would that be possible?
Depending on the person, there's a beautiful statement today I came across from Srila Prabhupada. I was just looking it up. I pulled it up here. Let me put it on the screen. This is, I'm calling it here, what is Kirtan? And it's from a lecture Prabhupada gave in Vrindavan in 1974 on Bhagavatam. And he said, just like we perform Kirtan with Kol and Kartal, that is also Krishna Kirtan. And to write books, that is also Krishna Kirtan. And to read books, that is also Krishna Kirtan. Not that this simply is, this Kirtan is Kirtan. If you write books about Krishna, if you read books about Krishna, if you talk about Krishna, you think of Krishna, you worship Krishna, you cook for Krishna, you eat for Krishna, that is Krishna Kirtan. I like the last one. Like take prasadam, that's also Krishna Kirtan. But anyway, the point I understand from this is that there's going to be different activities in different times for different people. And that's the art of preaching. Sometimes I tell the story of Srila Prabhupada when he first visited South Africa, and the devotees wanted to avoid the landlady who owned the property they were renting from, and she was outside the door and probably wanted to go for a walk. And the devotees were trying to discourage Prabhupada. Prabhupada just insisted, and then they said, well, Prabhupada, she's a really nasty person. She always says bad things. about Krishna, about the devotees. Prabhupada. So he went out and he just walked right up to her and started talking to her about the weather and about her teeth and this thing and that thing. And he never spoke to her about Krishna. But that lady, she liked Srila Prabhupada so much. So this, to me, it's a good example of madhyam behavior. Of course, Srila Prabhupada's an uttam, but he's acting like a madhyam. And he's neglecting her. He's neglecting her envy. But he's speaking, he's still friendly with her. And that friendship is a kind of way to preach. And sometimes I tell this other story that once I was traveling somewhere and we came to a hotel and we went to to check in, and there was some really nasty guy just in front of us. And he was screaming at the top of his lungs at this poor woman who was working there and calling her really bad names and stupid, idiot. Those are the nice things he was saying. The other things that we don't want to repeat. And the poor woman was literally shaking and saying, "Oh, I'm sorry, sir. I'm sorry, this and this." And finally, the guy just stormed off with a black cloud over his head. And then it was my chance to come up. And I'm wearing a dhoti, kurta and things. And I went up to her and I said, and I wanted room and whatever. And I said, I just want to tell you, I was watching everything. And the way you dealt with that guy, it was so good. It was so nice. And as soon as I said that, I didn't preach anything to her, but it looked like someone just took 100 pounds off her back. And she just, she said, "Oh, thank you." And I didn't preach to her, but I promise you, after that, she liked some Hare Krishna devotees at least. I'm quite sure. So it really depends upon the person that we're speaking to. We have to, and that also includes devotees. It's not, Satyananda Maharaj's comments, we oftentimes repeat that you ask someone, what is Krishna doing this time of day? And somebody will say, what, are you sexually agitated or something? There's some people, even devotees, you cannot speak to them about Krishna. But they're eager to hear about the mundane news. I'm sorry to say it. Or maybe they like to talk about Varnashram Dharma or something. And so you just talk to them about some things like that. And we have to neglect them. We have to neglect their envy. Is that helpful, Prabhu?
It's very helpful because it broadens the vision to that the experience of the person can make him positively Krishna conscious without directly stuffing him with you have or
Yeah, and in the beginning, isn't it? When we go out for book distribution, they had a book distribution marathon in Hungary not so long back, a few years ago. Vaisheshika was there doing it, and I was also there. And then we were all supposed to go out, and I hadn't done books on the street in many years, although that used to be my main service. And I remember thinking to myself, what do I tell people? And I remember thinking I would like to, somebody would give me a line, especially in Hungarian, because we're here. What do I tell people? Excuse me, sir, we're passing these out. These are for, whatever. You have some way to something you tell them. And then I was watching myself, and I was struck how, because book distribution is really something personal, and we should just go up and be a person and be friends with people. But here, I wanted to have the crutch of some mechanical line, and that's a natural thing for most of us when we're not being so personal. So, some people you just have to do that with. We don't know what else to say to them, and so we just, how are you doing? Is your husband being nice to you? Or this or that. We have our little things.
Yeah, that's another side to the whole topic that we've few times discussed with devotees, that we might be very proud how directly we are preaching with the books in the hand on the street, but contrary to what you suggested now, with practically like this indirect approach, that you might just tell them something mundane and still leave the positive impression that they will leave from that meeting like, oh, this guy is nice and he's Hare Krishna. So opposite to that, how many times it happens to book distributors, to Sankirtan devotees, to leave those with whom they meet with terrible impression, if I dare to say so.
Yeah, and how many times too with devotees, we meet devotees, and there's just so many devotees who don't want to hear about Krishna.
Yeah, that's
most of them. They're very eager to talk about social things, very eager to talk about scandals and problems, or you know, they want to talk about corporate management or varnashram thing, and that's okay. We can do that with them. We can be friends and love them for what they're doing. But that friendship only goes so far. We often quote this verse from the Sattva Tantra, Hari Lila Sutochara, Padeshi Sutta Tantra Karya Pritasta Vaharyata Bhakti Nashati, where the Sattva Tantra says we should learn how to associate with devotees by having hari-katha, and that's how we love devotees. So we have to practice this thing, and that love will come if we do that. So that requires a society that's free from envy. And in a big society, it just doesn't always work. If you're in ISKCON Mayapur and there's 5,000 devotees there, and every single devotee comes for Bhagavatam class, which I've never ever seen, but every single devotee came for Bhagavatam class, I would be terrified to be the person speaking, because I wouldn't know what we could say and what we couldn't say. Some people get really upset. I gave a class in Vrindavan a few years ago, and it went really good. The devotees really liked it. Everybody was really happy. But one devotee got upset and said, "What are you saying about Varnashram Dharma? Varnashram is really important." And he started challenging me. So classes should be ideally in a small, intimate group. Let's go on a little bit.
Thank you so much.
Siddha Hari Prabhu, would you like to read a little bit?
He's driving car. I've seen.
Oh, okay. Don't read and write. Don't read and drive at the same time.
Hare Krishna Prabhu.
Hare Krishna Prabhu. Nice to have you with us today.
So, Prabhu, you started early today because I was supposed to start at 11, isn't it?
I don't know what time for you guys. I think your time changed. Our time changed here. Maybe that's what it is. Isn't it recently?
Our time changed 2-3 weeks ago, and we have been joining it.
Yeah, actually, our European time changed, so now it's again the same gap as it was 2 weeks ago. So that far.
Oh my God. Okay.
So we'll ask something in our chat later on. I'd like to know from everybody what's a good time. If maybe 1 hour later starting is better or something. I personally like this time. It gives me some free time in the evening, which I usually need. Anyway, somebody want to read the CC Madhya 3203? Siddha Hari Prabhu, are you driving?
So I won't be able to read. I was not planning to. I just joined after seeing the WhatsApp messages. I'm sorry.
That the police will pull you over, man.
If I stay alive for that, yes.
I can read still. So CC Madhya 3203 purport. Advaita Acharya set an ideal example for all household devotees in his reception of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and his devotees, and in his execution of a daily festival at his home. If one has the proper means and wealth, he should occasionally invite the devotees of Lord Chaitanya who are engaged in preaching all over the world and hold a festival at home simply by distributing prasadam and talking about Krishna during the day and holding congregational chanting for at least 3 hours in the evening.
3 hours. Isn't that wonderful? So this is a standard. And there's another purport. Maybe someone can tell me where. I remember vaguely. I think second canto Bhagavatam. Something where Prabhupada speaks also about how householder devotees should have programs in their home. And it's a really important thing. And we heard from Nayananda Das Babaji, Prabhupada's godbrother. He was, Nayananda Das Babaji was friends with Prabhupada when Prabhupada was a householder. And he was saying how Prabhupada would always invite anybody over. And if devotees were finishing a preaching program and it's midnight or 1 o'clock in the morning, they could come and knock on his door anytime. Prabhupada would jump up and wake him up, and Prabhupada would give them a place to stay, arrange some prasadam for them. He loved to serve the devotees. And Prabhupada loved to have programs in his home. Such an important thing. An interesting thing, I meet a lot of sannyasis, and when we're traveling and giving classes, I'm friends with a lot of them. And speaking with them, without saying any names, in case somebody gets in trouble from recording with this or something, I've found that pretty much all the sannyasis in our movement basically don't like giving classes in temples. And of course, there's different exceptions. If everybody in that temple is your disciple, and some of the temples are more sweet than others, such as Nanda Maharaj and Goloka Dham, for example, or something. But in general, sannyasis don't like to go to temples, but they really like going to devotees' homes. And we know that the atmosphere is just so sweet. It's really a hoitaki, because the Yatma Supersedity, our heart is inspired by bhakti, which is a hoitaki, a pratiyata. The first canto describes that. And in the temple, people have to go. But when it's in someone's home, it's just because we want to do it. Then it becomes so very, very sweet. So I really appreciating what Prabhupada was saying a little earlier here. Let's jump back up to that again. Yeah, here it is. Prabhupada says, when discussing among devotees Krishna-katha is pleasing to the heart and ear, this requires a little training. And this training is given by the devotees. So we should have some training how to have hari-katha. We started off our session today. There was hardly anybody here. And Leela Purushottam Prabhu and I were just talking. And that happens a lot of times in different programs. But we need to have some formality. If there's no formality in a program, then a lot of times it just degrades and everybody's just talking and having a good time and this and that. But when there's formality, at this time we have kirtan, at this time somebody chants Jai Radha Madhav, and then they read a formal verse from Prabhupada's Gita or whatever, and then they speak on that, and nobody interrupts them, and they talk for so long, and then there's questions and answers. And when there's some formality like that, it helps us, it gives some structure to our Krishna-katha, and it becomes very pleasing to the heart and ear. So Prabhupada's saying it requires a little training, and this training is given by the devotees. So such an important point. There's a letter I have posted on our door in Jagannath Puri that Prabhupada wrote to his disciple Guru Das, who was the president at that time of ISKCON Vrindavan. And Prabhupada told him that he was appreciating that he was engaging all the devotees when they came to Vrindavan. And Prabhupada said that the idle mind is the devil's workshop. And he said he was appreciating very much that all the devotees, they should go out for kirtan. Such an important thing. Otherwise, what kind of things are they doing? So it's so important that we have Krishna-katha and that we learn how to associate with devotees. Let's look at another lecture from Vrindavan Srila Prabhupada gave. Prabhupada speaks about this principle. This is in 1972 on the 12th of November. Prabhupada said, if we do not associate with the advanced devotees, this is a Nectar Devotion lecture, the Uttama Adhikari, if we don't associate with advanced devotees, if we simply want to remain in the lowest stage of devotional service, and that's a little interesting clause there. In other words, if we don't associate with advanced devotees, it means that we're simply wanting to remain in the lowest stage. Then we're not making progress. Then we shall simply enjoy the material field without entering into the spiritual platform. So it's so important. Now, someone may say, yeah, Prabhu, but there's no Uttama Adhikaris, this or that. We should associate with devotees who are more advanced. And who is more advanced? That's a simple thing. There's somebody who's more advanced than me. That should be a pretty easy thing. What's the letter I have on the door? I could look it up if somebody reminds me later on. It's a letter Prabhupada wrote to Guru Das. It probably would have been in 1976 or 77. And Prabhupada was encouraging him like that. So this is the purpose of the Krishna conscious movement, that we want to associate with devotees. And we do that by hearing hari-katha. And that association with the devotees is so important. In Orissa and Puri, there's a story they tell about my namesake, Madhav Das. He was one Vaishnava who was born in a Brahmin family in Kanyakubja. And when his wife left her body, he became detached from family life, and he left his son who was grown up, and he came to Jagannath Puri. And he was so absorbed in his Nam Bhajan and his ecstasy and love of God that Madhava Das just forgot all about eating and drinking. And sometimes he would fast for like 3 days, and he didn't feel any hunger or thirst or anything because he was just so absorbed in thinking of the Lord. But the Lord, he's Bhakti-man. That's the nature of the Lord. He's thinking about the benefit of his devotees. So Jagannath personally put some food aside on his famous golden plate that he had. And he asked Lakshmi Devi to personally take that prasadam on that golden plate to Madhav Das's little bhajan kutir. So Madhav Das was sitting in his kutir with his back facing the door. When Lakshmi Devi arrived, all that he heard was the sound of her ankle bells. And he was meditating at that time on Shri Radha and Krishna. And when Lakshmi Devi arrived, there was like a lightning flash inside the cottage. And Madhav Das looked around, but he didn't see Lakshmi Devi. He just saw the plate of prasadam. And then he realized, oh, this is wonderful. Lord Jagannath personally sent this for me. So he honored the prasadam and left the plate there. And the next morning, when the Pandits opened the temple door for Jagannath in the morning, they couldn't find that golden plate for the sign of Bhog. And they started searching here and there. They're thinking we're going to get in big trouble. The king is going to arrest us. And finally, they found the plate in the bhajan kutir of Madhav Das. And the Pandits arrested him and they started beating him with a stick. And it is described later that when the Pandits went to worship Lord Jagannath, they were shocked when they found that Jagannath had all kinds of bruises on his body. Much in the same way that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu accepted the beating that the Muslims were giving to Hari-Das Thakur, so in the same way Lord Jagannath accepted the beating that they were giving to Madhava Das. And then Lord Jagannath spoke to them in a dream and told them that I'm the one who sent that prasadam to Madhava Das. He didn't steal that plate. And so then the Pandits, they felt very bad, and then they fell down on the ground and they begged forgiveness from Madhava Das. So many, many wonderful stories are there about this devotee. During the winter one year in Puri, it got a little cold. I'm not so sympathetic with that. These days, I don't think it gets cold in Puri. It snows here. It never snows in Puri, but it does get somewhat cold a few days. And there was one night it got really a little cold, and Madhava Das was shaking. And Lord Jagannath then, he came out of the temple and he covered Madhava Das's body with his blanket, his personal blanket. And Madhava Das later, he woke up and realized what had happened, and he started crying in ecstasy. On another occasion, the same devotee, he had some loose motions, he had some diarrhea. And so he was staying near the ocean because he had to be someplace where he could take bath and do his business. And he was staying there, his body became so thin and weak that he wasn't able to get any water to drink. So then Lord Jagannath personally came and gave him water. And Lord Jagannath was personally coming and cleaning him. And when Madhava Das realized that Jagannath had done this, Madhava Das was crying and crying. This is the nature of the Lord, that he appreciates Vaishnav Seva so much. There's another story I'll tell you also. That this comes from Nabadas's Bhaktamala, a version of Bhaktamala, which Bhaktivinoda and Bhaktisiddhanta appreciated. In Rajasthan, there was a family where there was a very pious boy born. His name was Haridas. And he was a very wonderful, simple devotee. He was just very, very attached to serving the Lord and hearing the pastimes of the Lord from Ramayana and Bhagavatam and that. He was very, very fond of serving the Vaishnavas. And so one day, Haridas, he'd gone out, and while he was gone, a group of Vaishnavas arrived at his house. And his wife and family, they took care of those Vaishnavas and served them nicely, and then the Vaishnavas left. And after they left, then Haridas returned to his home, and he heard about the Vaishnavas. But oh, I miss seeing them. I didn't get a chance to serve the Vaishnavas. This is so terrible. And so he started running after them so that at least he could have the darshan of the Vaishnavas. And when Krishna saw the eagerness that Haridas had to have darshan of the Vaishnavas, and the love that Haridas had, the respect that he had, the appreciation he had for the Vaishnavas, Krishna became so pleased with Haridas that he manifested the form of a devotee, and he came before Haridas. And he asked him, he said, "Hey, Baba, where are you going?" And Haridas told him, he said, "Oh, I'm looking for the devotees who came to my house while I was away." and then Krishna standing in front of him as a devotee, and Haridas doesn't recognize him, of course. And as a devotee, he told him, he said, "You just have my darshan, and you'll get the benefit of seeing the devotees." And then Haridas, he said, "Really?" He said, "I don't know. Can you glorify the Lord? Can you do hari-katha like the devotees do? Can you honor prasadam like them?" and Krishna said, "Yes, yes." And he started doing kirtan. And it was like thousands of devotees were doing kirtan. Haridas was very impressed. So then he took him home and gave him some very nice prasadam. And then Krishna ate everything in the house. And then from that, Haridas could understand that no ordinary human being could do this, but this is my Lord. And then Krishna gave Haridas a darshan in his original form. So this is the nature of Krishna. He appreciates Vaishnava-sanga so very, very much. It's such a very, very important thing. My Guru Maharaj used to comment on this, that Sujati Yashya Snigha Sadhu-sanga Satovare, Rupa Goswami's statement in Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, where Prabhupada said, where Rupa Goswami said that we should associate with devotees who are Sujatiya. My Guru Maharaj commented, Sujatiya, he said, means in ISKCON, means literally in our family, same family. Sujati Asya Snigda, they should be affectionate. Sadhu-sanga Satovare, they should be sadhus. And he defines sadhu in a very simple way. Oftentimes Guru Maharaj would define sadhu as a Prema-bhakti. But in at least this one lecture, I remember him speaking on this verse, and he said that sadhu means anyone who is more advanced than you. So unless you're a complete psycho, mad person, I think we can all find devotees that we feel are more advanced than we are. And it's such a very, very important thing. We have to live our life in this way, associate with devotees who are like-minded and more advanced than ourselves, and we associate with them by having Krishna-katha. So this is the instruction of Narottam Das Thakur in Prema-bhakti-candrika. I'll put this verse on the board again. He says, Asat Sangha Sada Tyag, Chada Anya Gita Rag, Karmigyani Parihari Dure, Kebala Bhakata Sangha, Prema-katha Rasa Ranga, Lila-katha Braja Rasa Puri. We should associate with the devotees like this, and we should hear, in particular, Prema-katha and Lila-katha. This is an instruction from Narottam Das Thakur. It's from everybody. It's even for devotees in ISKCON. But as we were commenting, some devotees may get disturbed if you go and speak with some of the subject with them, which means they're not qualified to hear it. And so we don't hate them, but we practice upeksha. There's some envy, perhaps, in their heart. They don't have faith in you, or they don't have faith in the subject matter. Prabhu, we're not supposed to hear that. We're only supposed to hear you're not your body and about vegetarianism. And I remember one senior devotee, Prabhupada disciple, who has disciples, came once and gave a Bhagavatam class in Los Angeles in front of about 100 devotees. It was all devotees only. And he spoke about different reasons. The subject of the class was different reasons why we should be vegetarian according to the Bible. And he's a really good speaker, but everybody who was there was a vegetarian. And nobody who was there was very much interested in the Bible. It wasn't very relevant for all of us. So Rupa Goswami, he says that Guhyamakyati Prichati. It's so important, Savidam Priti Lakshanam, that we have this 6 types of loving exchanges with devotees. And one of them is to have some confidential katha, So Leela Purushottam Prabhu was commenting earlier, discussing, that depends upon the devotee. What is confidential with one person may be not confidential with someone else. If you're speaking with Ayendra Prabhu and you're just telling him, wow, somebody told me this thing, you're not your body, that is so cool. He might laugh and appreciate that and say something, but he likes to hear a lot of other things. And if you speak some of the things that he likes to talk about, Sakis and Manjaris and this and that, to somebody in the temple program, like one friend of ours in Mayapur once, he came to me and said, Prabhu, they blacklisted me. I'm not allowed to give Bhagavatam class in the temple. I said, oh my God, what did you do? He said, well, we started reading Govinda Lilamrita and we wanted to share it with the devotees. It was so ecstatic, it was so wonderful. So we wanted to share it with devotees when they gave Bhagavatam class. And that was the last Bhagavatam class he gave for a period of time. So Guru Maharaj once told me, he said that the frogs can't digest the ghee. So if you try to give ghee to frogs, they're just going to make a bad sound. They're going to die. They're going to get upset with you. We have to learn who is a proper association. But one very important point we can understand, several points in this verse. Sadhu-sanga said a Chad, we don't want to associate with people who don't want to hear Anya-gita Raga, have attachment to other songs other than Prema-katha and Lila-katha. Implicit in this verse is this point. We don't want to associate even with devotees who are more like karmis or gyanis. And parihari dure, from a distance, we just stay away from them. Kevala bhakta sangha, our only association we want to have with devotees is prema-katha, rasa ranga. We want to have a good time with that. That's our rasa ranga. We want to have a party of that Krishna-katha, as Prabhupada was instructing the Grihastas. They should come together and have katha and then have 3 hours of kirtan. Lila katha braja rasa pure. And we should be get absorbed in this lila katha braja ras. Such a very, very important thing. This is the purpose of our movement. And as we comment so many times, I think we can't say it enough, reading Krishna book is legal. In fact, we're instructed to read Krishna book. Prabhupada expected us to read Krishna book, including the pastimes about the Ras Leela. Otherwise, what's the purpose of our movement if we don't come together and speak about Krishna? We're only going to come together and just do some nonsense katha. And it's going on so much in our movement today. And we think that even we think we're saving the movement because we're chastising the child molesters, or we're chastising the cheaters and that. And that's a fact that the kind of chastisement is needed. Whether or not you're the person who can do that chastisement is another question. People have faith in you or not. But if that's the only kind of katha that we have going on, it will destroy the movement. And ultimately, I'm sorry to say, you won't be successful in your desire to drive out Kali and make things pure. So I'm going to go ahead and stop there. And I'm going to look and see, there's some number of comments. Ujjala Rasiga made a number of different comments here. She said there has to be a constant saving grace in ISKCON, at least for sincere devotees, though not for corporate devotees. Somebody challenged me in our discussion, and they said, well, what do you think? What's going to happen to corporate ISKCON? And I said, to tell you the truth, I really don't care. I'm really not worried about it. I said, to tell you the truth, I'm really not worried if they drive out all the gurus. If that's Krishna's arrangement, that'll be Krishna's arrangement. But the movement needs to go on. And the movement is hari-katha and Krishna kirtan. It's not based on any particular individual. It's certainly not based on the corporate thing. So Ujjwala goes on, yes, it's very painful to see the corporate trying to swallow up Krishna-katha. Kindly continue to be a part of the saving grace for Krishna-katha and kirtan. That's all that we have. I'm getting a little older. I'm feeling very sad. I just want to speak Krishna-katha. I want to just do this thing. What else is there in our life? Ujjwala Rasiga went on, how fortunate is Madhava Das. He didn't feel hunger, thirst, and sleep in Hari Bhajan. Thank you for speaking about devotees like that. And Natalia looks like she had to check out. Okay. So, okay, we'll go ahead and stop there. Ujjwala Rasiga, would you like to share anything else? Thank you for your nice comments. I always appreciate your reflections very much. You're always thoughtful and very much from the heart. And I think she's having to work right now. Yeah, she can't talk right now. No problem. We understand. I'm so happy. I'm very grateful and touched that you're still so determined to take part, even though you're surrounded by everybody there in the hospital and you're doing what you can. Okay, then Gaurani Thai Prabhu. This is like really early for Gaurani Thai. It's only like, it's before 10 o'clock. It's only 10 till 10. In India, this is like early for him, hari-katha. Do you want to share anything with us, Gaurani Thai Prabhu?
Hare Krishna, thank you very much. I came late because I didn't recognize that 1 hour earlier will be in Europe, anyway.
Yeah, I should have said something. The time changed. I couldn't figure out why. There was nobody there, only Mula Purushottam Prabhu and Ujjwala Rasiga in the beginning. It's my fault. I should have said something. I forgot about the time change.
So tomorrow is Lord Ramachandra's appearance day.
Yes.
And we know that Lord Ramachandra have a great history and have a great teachings. But still, we want to prepare for Krishna Lila. So can you explain that how we focus on Lord Ramachandra's story, teachings, to prepare ourselves to go to Vraja Lila? So what part of Ramayana, what part of his teaching, what part of his behavior preparing us, and how is preparing us? Maybe it's a too big topic, but something.
Something. Recently, we were invited to visit a synagogue, a Jewish synagogue here in Debrecen. And it was one of the oldest synagogues, I think maybe one of the oldest in Europe even, definitely one of the oldest in Hungary. And the, what do you call the guy? The person in charge there, I forget what his title is, but he was showing us their old books and walking us around. He was such a wonderful host. He was really nice. And I was thinking to myself while we were there, I was remembering Bhaktivinoda Thakur's instruction we gave somewhere where he said that when we go to another temple or another place, we should think, this is my Lord who's being worshipped, only he's being worshipped in a different sort of way. And so that's what we also think about Lord Ramachandra. We should see Krishna in Lord Ram, but we should think that he's being worshipped, he's manifested in a different way because the devotees have this particular mood around him. And therefore he's manifested as Maryada Purushottam, or the person who's the best at following the Vedic Maryada. And I actually, next Thursday, not tomorrow Thursday, but a week from tomorrow, I've been requested to give a class to some devotees in Ukraine about Ram Lila. And I told them I was going to speak about seeing Krishna in Ram Lila. And we want to understand, when we see Ram, we think about Krishna. Oh, he's my Krishna, but he's in this particular mood. And one of the things that I like to speak about, I'll tell you a little Ram Katha. It's something, one of my favorite Ram Kathas. We know that Kaikeyi was the most intimate wife of Maharaj Dasarath. And we know from Acharya's commentaries and from Valmiki Ramayana that Kaikeyi's love for Ramachandra was greater than that of Kausalya's. Kausalya was the direct mother of Ramachandra. Kaikeyi was one of the stepmothers, I guess you could call her. She was one of the other wives of Dasarath. So the question arises, which for me, I remember when I joined, someone gave me a copy of Valmiki Ramayana. I think I read it 3 or 4 times. I really liked it. But after the first time or two, I stopped reading about Kaikeyi and her servant Manthara, and how Manthara convinced Kaikeyi to go against Ram, and that she requested Dasarath for these 2 boons, and she had Ramachandra banished to the Dundak forest, and she requested that you put Bharat, you make him the regent, you make him the Yuvaraj, the next king. It just hurt my heart. I didn't like to read that section because how can it just didn't make sense to me. And then later, I think we saw one of these movies about Ramayana, and they gave some kind of commentary in the movie in the form of the story that Saraswati Devi came and she stayed in the mouth of Manthara, and Manthara therefore had some Shakti by which she was able to convince Kaikeyi that she should ask for these two terrible boons, which finally killed Dasarath. And I heard that, I saw that, and I still didn't feel very satisfied. If anything, I felt less satisfied, because then what you're telling me, you got Kaikeyi, who's an eternal associate of Lord Ramachandra, whose love for Lord Rama is more intense than Kaushalya's, because her love is ahoitaki. Kaushalya has a motivation. She loves Ram, but she has a reason. Ram is her son, but Kaikeyi, Ram is not even her direct son. So there's some answer in that story, but the answer is that the demigods apparently are so powerful that they can overcome the rasa, or the mellow that an eternal associate has for the Lord. And I found that even more disturbing in some ways. And so some years back, we were, one of my favorite pastimes, favorite things to do, we had gone to Kolkata for a book fair, and we were getting our hands really dirty, looking through old Bengali and Sanskrit books at the book fair. And I found a copy of just the first kanda of the Valmiki Ramayana in Bengali with a commentary in Sanskrit written in Bengali characters. And we had some of that translated. And I found in that commentary that it gives an explanation for this story, which I found very, very satisfying. That actually Kaikeyi she had such intense love for Ramachandra. And Kaikeyi is a young lady, and her mood toward the Lord is a little mixed with that she likes to see the Lord enjoying in a conjugal kind of way, like a young lady enjoys. So when Lord Ramachandra married Sita, Kaikeyi was so happy. And then Sita returned to Ayodhya with Ramachandra. But then Kaikeyi saw that everything was very, very formal, and that Sita and Ram never had a chance to be alone together. And Sita and Kaikeyi wanted that so badly, because her love for the Yugal Kishore, in this case for Sita and Ramachandra, was greater than her own desire. And so finally, Dadami Buddhi Yogam Tam, the Lord gave some intelligence to her, and Kaikeyi realized how she could arrange for Sita and Ram to have some private, more intimate time together. But she realized that if I do this, it'll kill my husband. If I do this, everyone is going to hate me forever. And whenever anybody says anything about Kaikeyi, they make a face, oh, that woman, she's so bad. And my own son Bharat will reject me and hate me. But she realized this will work. And what her understanding was that I can ask Dasarath to give me the two boons that he promised me previously when I saved his life, when his chariot driver was killed, and I rescued him and took him away from the battle. So I'll ask for these two boons, that Ram be driven out into the forest, and everyone will hate me for it. But there in the forest, Sita and Ram, just like we sing Jai Radha Madhav, we don't just sing Jai Radha Madhav, we sing Jai Radha Madhav Kunja Bihari. We want to see Radha Madhav in the Kunj. And so Kaikeyi had a similar mood. She wanted to see Sita and Ram in that kind of situation. And this is why she did like this, even though she knew that everybody would hate her forever and ever. So this is one way that I see Krishna Leela and Ram Leela, through the different rasas, and understanding the mellow, and understanding something in this case about Kaikeyi, and understanding also that the Lord's desire to enjoy the conjugal mellow in Ram Leela was not fully satisfied, because all that he was able to taste was the swakiya. He couldn't taste the parakiya. And because that desire for parakiya was there in him, but he couldn't satisfy it because Lord Ramachandra had made a vow that Ekapatni Brata, I'll only accept one wife. Therefore, he had to come again as Krishna. So we see that in Ram Lila. We see our Krishna, our Vrindavan Bihari, and his pastimes in Ram Lila. And we think about it, that this is our Lord, our Krishna, our Vrindavan Krishna, who likes to play the flute and be with Radharani. But he's manifesting a different form to satisfy his devotees in Ayodhya, who want to see some kind of Nara Lila, and who are full of admiration for the Lord when he comes as Maryada Purushottam, when he manifests this form of following all the rules and regulations of etiquette very properly. And we see today in India that Krishna worship, not everybody appreciates. But a lot of people, they appreciate Lord Ramachandra. And if you talk to them about Krishna, they'll say, well, yeah, Krishna's God. He lifted Govardhan Hill. He killed Putana. He killed Bakasura and Aghasura. He danced on Kaliya. But I don't know about this Krishna because he married 16,108 queens in Dwarka. And how can you do that? Is that legal? Is that bona fide? How can you be God and do such a thing? And of course, we reply that how can you do such a thing if you're not God? You have to be God to do such a thing. But they can't appreciate that because they think that rules and regulations are the most important thing. And they think that even God must be having to follow all the rules and regulations. So they have a very hard time with Gaudiya Vaishnavism. In Gaudiya Vaishnavism, our Acharya is headed by Jiva Goswami. And in his Bhakti Sandarbha, he quotes a verse from Skanda Purana where Krishna says, Man nimitam kritam papam apadharmaya kalpate mama naditya dharmapi papam yashama papavataha. He says that someone who is doing dharma, man nimitam kritam papam, someone's doing pap, they're doing some sin, man nimitam kritam papam apadharmaya kalpate, but they're doing that pap for me. And that doesn't mean like Hari Chandra Prabhu going into a store and stealing some candy or something so he can offer it to Krishna later on. It's not like that. But it means that someone like Yudhishthira, he's telling a lie. And Yudhishthira never tells a lie. But he told a lie and said Ashwatthama was dead. He told a lie for Krishna's pleasure. That, some people say that because of that he had to see the hellish planets. But actually, Krishna explains in the Skanda Purana that so-called pap becomes dharma. And on the other hand, mama nadrityo, if someone anadritya, they neglect me, they're not interested, then their so-called dharma becomes pap. And therefore we say that there's two types of varnashram. That verse is from the Skanda Purana. It's quoted by Jiva Goswami in Bhakti Sandarbha. If you remind me later on, I could paste it into our quote. It's not into our discussion. It's not a quote you probably want to recite at a Sunday feast program or something, but it's a very wonderful verse which indicates our Gaudiya mood. Is that okay, Gauni Tai Prabhu? Something about Ramachandra?
Yes, thank you very much. Just before this katha with you and with other Prabhus, I have a similar katha about this topic. And by that meditation, we have some questions, which was one of the questions which you answered. But also it's very nice to see that when we go to the verses where Sukadeva Goswami start to explain the Ramayana to Parishit Maharaj, and how he puts together, that also we can find, if we meditate on that connection, very interesting relationships. May I mention some which we formed?
Please, go ahead.
So one of that we never heard any other incarnation who could play like this four brothers together, like very freely, almost without any restriction, like Lord Rama, Lakshman, Bharat, and Shatrugna, they were just like a cohort boys. Of course, it's in the palace of Dasharath, but they played really like later Krishna could play with his friends, but it was restricted. It was still not in the forest. So that's preparing for the next step when Krishna could play really freely with his friend without any restriction of the parental house or this palace. So that was one of the relationship. And the other, which is coming from the Canto 9, chapter 10, text 4, then what you mentioned, that here is the very beautiful explanation that how Mother Sita wandered from one forest to another on his lotus feet, which were so delicate that they were unable to bear even the touch of Sita's palm. So is it not makes us remember of the Krishna Lila when he's the same? It's almost the same. It's not exactly, but it's preparing for that mood. And the other of the same, which you already mentioned before, that how he cuts off the nose of and ears of Surpanaka. It's again preparing for the Krishna Lila. And so many things should be there, just we have to go with this mood, and we find many, like in the verse of text 6. So Lord Ramachandra were wonderful, like those of a baby elephant. We remember that Krishna is many times compared to how he's walking like an elephant. Here a baby elephant, so a little like that. So it's also preparing us. So that's we found and many others, but I wanted to mention that.
Oh, that's very sweet. Thank you. Yeah, it's such a nice thing when we can see our beloved Ishtadev in other places, even like a synagogue or this or that. It gives us some happiness in our heart, and we can give respect. Once we went to Uzbekistan, and they took us to one of the most important mosques in all of Islam. And I have to confess, it was a little hard for me to see Krishna there. It was easier in the synagogue. At least they had some old manuscripts, and it sounded like Sanskrit what they were doing, and some things, there's some similar words. Anyway, thank you for that, Gornitai Prabhu. Let's keep going on. Natalia, do you want to share anything? Are you there? There's Natalia. Haribo.
Hare Krishna. So I will just maybe, oh no, I even cannot share darshan of Lord Jagannath. No, sorry, thank you very much. I was just listening to you all, and I'm happy for this opportunity. I will just listen more. Thank you.
Well, thank you. It's nice to have your association here. Hare Krishna. And let's see who else is here. Tirthakar Prabhu, you have to usually go early. Do you want to share anything?
Hare Krishna, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna.
Yes. I'm sorry, I'm a little busy.
It's okay.
Because something came out in life, and I have to fix it today. Yeah, it was really nice katha. I really like this Gornitai Prabhu's question, and then your explanation of Ramayana. That was like really mind blowing. Never heard this before. So to see this Krishna Lila in it. And also I want to say one more thing when you said about this, the devotees who maybe, because I was thinking that sometimes we meet with devotees, they maybe not, for whatever reason, they are not ready to discuss certain topics when it comes to Krishna Lila. But I was wondering that why do they have to impose this on others? You know, this is like, for me, like, I always try to be really careful not to impose on others my views. And I was just wondering why. Okay, if you don't like it, that's fine. Everybody has their preferences in life, you know, like with the food and everything. So why you have to just make it rule for others that we should not study these things? Like it's like a general rule. It's like this is so actually bad, you know.
It's really painful in the heart. And also, if you have Vaishnavas, traditional Vaishnavas visiting, which in our world today we have, a lot of times we have some Gaudiya Math devotees or Babajis. I was in Stockholm and there was a Mataji coming to all of our classes who was initiated by Anantadas Pandit, the Mahant at Radhakund. And she really liked our classes somehow. And it was nice she coming. So we should be aware that we're representing Srila Prabhupada. And if people come to our movement, we're telling them, you can't talk about Krishna. The people, what kind of place is this? You talk about management or this or that. It's sad. It's a really sad thing. And this is why we need Sadhu-sanga. And we can step forward, and you're a preacher, Prabhu, you know this principle very well, as you're just saying, that you don't force yourself on everybody. There's some people, you're a good speaker, but not everybody wants to hear from you. My Guru Maharaj was a great speaker. Not everybody wanted to hear from him. Not everybody had faith in him. Srila Prabhupada, not everybody wanted to hear from Prabhupada. There were some people who tried to quarrel with him and would leave and things when the Krishna-katha would begin. And that's so. What can you do? We just have to pray to Krishna, and we have to see who's has some adhikar, some qualification, and speak accordingly. But that talking has to be very loving. I think it's really, really important. And we see that in the example of Prabhupada, that sometimes he would meet some devotees' parents, and they weren't interested in Krishna at all. But Prabhupada would speak to them in such a sweet, loving way, in such a friendly way, they would just become completely charmed. And they would appreciate the Vaishnavas in that way. That's just human. But I see some devotees, they just mechanically decide, I'm only going to speak to everybody about Krishna. And sometimes I tell the story how I was arrested by the police doing book distribution. And to get out of it, I started preaching to the police, something like that. They just threw me out of the car. Nobody likes that. Even devotees don't like that. It's horrible. We have to share things in a very sweet, loving way. Okay. Anything else here at the car, Prabhu? Okay. Thank you, Prabhu, for taking part. It's good to see you again. Hare Krishna. We were just speaking, by the way, with Leela Purushottam. It looks like we may come to Serbia for the summer camp there. I haven't confirmed that yet, but we might even visit Czech. I don't know. I'll have to ask if Leela Purushottam is bona fide with the local BBC and devotees. I don't know if he is. Any type of comments? What is that, Prabhu?
We're praying and hoping for it. We already a few times discussed with our group that we have to figure out some good plan to inspire you to to come.
Thank you. So let's see, Siddha Hari Prabhu, you jumped in really late. Do you have anything you want to share? Maybe you don't. I don't know. I don't want to pressurize you. You're smiling face here, just so everybody gets the benefit of having your online darshan.
Thank you, Prabhu, for your sweet words. I really appreciate your reply to Gaurita Prabhu and his question. I and Jagger, we were discussing about something in that regard a few days ago, that how, as Gaudiya Vaishnavas, how we're supposed to read Ramayana and how it's supposed to absorb it. Because in some sense, it seems like a different rasa, not the same rasa, but at the same time, the explanation which you shared today, it gives us some way of meditation. Does that mean that we should look for a Gaudiya Vaishnava commentary like you have access to when you're reading Ramayana? And it's also quite far out that, what's the likelihood that you have this question and then you going to a book fair and finding a book in some like a descript place, and you're finding exact, and that would be Bengali and Sanskrit, and then you're able to find that this may have an answer to your question. That was a very far out incident, and showing your faith in and your degree of desire to understand that topic. That was far out.
Krishna's kind. If we have some desire, and we should read, just like Gani Tai Prabhu was saying, and we hear about Lord Ramachandra with let's say Hanuman, with Bharat and Lakshman and Sugriv, his brothers, and they're playing in the house, but it's not like Krishna Lila. We should be looking always for our Ishtadev, but we can't do that unless we have some place for him in our heart. And just like a boy who's in love with a girl, wherever he goes, he thinks about her and he sees her and he's, oh, she'll like that chocolate, she'll like these flowers, she'd like this movie. He sees her everywhere. That's the nature of love. And we're not on that platform, but still we should be cultivating that. And I really appreciate Bhaktivinoda Thakur's instruction. I found it so wonderful when we went to that synagogue, that we could appreciate and see our Lord there. And the rabbi was a very nice fellow. We went with this Mataji. It's a friend of my wife. Her name's not coming. She's an initiated devotee. Her brother is like the top Jew in all of Hungary. So we had like a real VIP reception when we went to. It was the first time I'd been to a synagogue. It was a really interesting experience for me. But just thinking about what Bhaktivinoda said, this is my Lord, this is my Krishna, but he's being worshipped here in a different kind of way.
Thank you, Prabhu. Prabhu, I have one more question I wanted to ask you on that tangential topic. We were reading this Embankment of Suppression recently after your suggestion and Jagar's suggestion too. And one devotee asked me this question, which I didn't know how to answer. He was mentioning that Govinda Maharaj has shared so many unique explanations there of Siddhanta, which he hasn't found anywhere else. Like nobody even discusses those topics. And of course, there are references for everything he's discussing. But one topic he was wondering was this topic of desire, which all these avatars have. Like Nrsimhadev has a desire, and then you have another incarnation who has a desire. Like Lord Ram has a desire. That's why Krishna comes. Like where does that explanation come from? Is that his personal realization, or is that something also coming from some other commentary?
Good question. Those kind of questions are things which I'm very interested in for myself, and I approach it in different ways. One thing I've done is I've met some of my Guru Maharaj's childhood friends, like Fakir Mohan Prabhu, and spoke with him about the kind of things they used to talk about. And I've met some sadhus that used to come and see Guru Maharaj, or that he would go to see sometimes, and I'd find out what kind of things they would speak about. I've also gone through his library. He has a lot of Bengali books and audio books, and looked to see what kind of things he was studying. Mahanam Brata Brahmachari was a very amazing Vaishnava. Guru Maharaj liked very much some of his commentaries. I can see he liked it because he spoke some of the stories that he gave about Uddhava meeting Nanda Maharaj in Mathura meets Vrindavan. That's really from Uddhava Sandesh by Mahanam Brata Brahmachari. Was a very wonderful Vaishnava. He was the first. He went to America, I don't know, maybe 30 years before Srila Prabhupada. He's from West Bengal. And he went and he wore dhoti and kurta, and he gave lectures in all the universities about Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and about the Hare Krishna mantra. And he had practically no success because it wasn't Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's desire. I found some articles written by him in some old Bengali magazines that we collected like 100 years ago or something. He went there in the 1920s. Anyway, that's one comment there. So in regards to that particular story, the greed of the Lord, it's wonderful. That was a katha we just did recently for the devotees in Eger here in Hungary. And I was meditating on it, and Guru Maharaj, I don't know, I can't say if it's something. He read a lot of different books. He would read Bengali books sometimes from Gaudiya Math, from Babaji's also, and different Vaishnavas. And if he saw something that he appreciated, he would take the principles out from it. I don't know if he read something like that and where he got this idea from, or if it was just his own revelation, his own realization. You can find it. Basically, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta says there's an evolution in consciousness, also the different avatars and their mood. And if we study Ram Leela, we can see how Lord Ramachandra had this desire. We can understand how Lord Nrsimhadev must have had a desire to have a mother and father because he's Stambhaputra. It's not nice having a pillar as your mother and father. There's no rest of there. So every incarnation after that had a mother and father. That article too, by the way, was the first, maybe the only, I think the only article BTG ever read, ever printed of Guru Maharaj. And they edited it down heavily. Then later Raghava Pandit unedited it, turned it back to the original thing, and we printed in Embankment of Separation. So that's my only comment, Prabhu. I'm also I like being a literary detective. So maybe we'll find out something more later on.
Yeah, we were looking also at the revised edition which recently came to Jaipur, Prabhu, and there are still some songs which are given there for which there are no references. I was thinking that you must be still searching for them because the songs are there, but we don't know where they come from.
Yeah, I have to see. Maybe sometimes we found them in a songbook, but we couldn't find the author. There was once or twice that happened. But
he's talking about the song in chapter 2, where Krishna's Krishna, they taught that, they said, where did you learn that song from? And he said, I learned it from my guru, Gandharvika.
Yeah, I think that song is one of the Leela Kirtans from Gadagiri village. Damodar Giri Prabhu, at one point I Xeroxed his whole songbook. He collected all kinds of rare songs, which they were singing for hundreds of years. And by like Chandan Das, by like Yana Das, these are two well-known Pajavali poets around the time of Mahaprabhu, shortly after, and their songs are there. So I think it's from there, but I don't recall exactly now.
Thank you, Prabhu. We're quite amazed by your knowledge and the stuff you know about different scriptures and different songs. Thank you for sharing that, Prabhu.
All right, Chandra Prabhu, do you want to share anything? You came in late, I know. Maybe you don't have anything you're inspired to share today. We're still happy to see you.
Thank you. In my mind is gratitude for this Sangha, because it's for me very nice topics are there in a high level of understanding, and yesterday we have a program here in our place. And we chant with one family, and the child was very happy because they are dancing and like child do. And after that, the mother, this child, told me that after program, the child's singing Hare Krishna a long time, like to the evening. And yes, and for me, I'm like I'm also like this child, because after this session in my mind is these topics and questions, answers, and I can remembering about it.
Yeah, it's so very, very important that we come together and we should discuss back and forth like we're doing now. Different things from different devotees, and it brings it alive for us. Very, very important. And really nice to hear you doing that program in your home. That's Gaudiya Vaishnavism, doing programs in the home, and it's so sweet and so nice. I really like very much doing programs in the Purushottam Prabhu's home. It was really nice when we were there, Prabhu. Such a sweet atmosphere, because you don't feel politics or anything. Is no people. If somebody doesn't like him, they just don't go to his program. Right? There's no politics. But if you go to the temple and you show up at the temple, somebody sees and they, oh, that guy. The temple is more a neutral place, but we're not neutral people. We like friendships, and we should come together with like-minded devotees. So important. Hare Krishna. Thank you, Prabhuji. I appreciate that. Hey, Jaigor, do you want to share anything with us?
Yeah, Prabhu. I was really appreciating just being part of the Sangha and hearing your kathas. And last night I was reading Jiva Dharma, and he was speaking about Nitya Dharma and Naimittika Dharma.
Mm-hmm.
And he says, some people can call certain things Nitya Dharma, but really at the end of the day, Nitya Dharma means Krishna Prema. Vaishnava Dharma and Nitya Dharma are the same thing. And he said all these Naimittika Dharmas, Naimittika Karmas, they're mixed and they're full of faults and they're fit to be rejected, basically. And I was just really appreciating how we can come together, under your shelter and just focus on hearing Krishna-katha directly. It's not that we have to try and eke out some other meaning of what's being said in the Shastra. We can
Narottam Das Thakur says Prema-katha rasa rangi, lila-katha braja rasa puri. That's the program.
So I'm just feeling very grateful to be here hearing those things, and instead of so many things could be there, people trying to speak things for certain purposes or to highlight certain aspects that aren't directed towards exclusive Krishna consciousness, but somehow by some good fortune I found myself here, so I'm just feeling like that.
I was thinking about you on Monday, where some things are happening in Puri. Some really super exciting. I mean, extremely exciting, far out things, which look like it'd be really good for a community there. And
wow.
There's a wonderful devotee who's going to start working with us. He was in charge of the Govardhan Eco Village. He's the one who got
wow.
them together. And he has all kinds of connections. He got a $500,000 donation from the Russian government to do an eco village in Kathak. He's got that things. And
things are stirring.
Yeah, really fired up to work with us. I mentioned something about you also. We want to do some Harinam there and Kirtan and things. Okay. And Gornitai Prabhu. I like your comments too, Gornitai Prabhu. I'm reading maybe. Leela Purushottam Prabhu, do you want to share anything? Give us something wise to finish with.
Why? Well, I wanted maybe to be a little more clear on the beginning of the today's katha. You mentioned the story of Gaur-Govinda Maharaj. He was associating with one devotee, but then later he commented that he can't relate.
Das Babaji was his name. I remember it now.
Yeah. That he can't really have the deep sangha with him because he's Ram Bhakta. That was the point. And it was like my mind always works in categories. So it would be like different Ishtadev. And then my question is like, does it go even farther to be specified? Like, even if we would agree on Krishna, then still the real Sajatiya, the real like our DNA would be the same Staibhava or same rasa.
If you're in Madhurya Rasa, are you in Chandravali's camp?
Yeah, exactly.
If you're in Lalita's camp, are you with Narottam Das Thakur boiling milk? Or are you with Guna Manjari helping to dress Radharani? Or there's so many different divisions even on the Lalita Sakhi.
So it's legal to think in these terms.
Sure.
Okay.
Just don't dress up in a sari. That's not legal.
Yeah.
Out of the Czech yatra.
And now back to my reality, I'm still puzzled with this line, Chada Anya Gita Rak. Like, it's because this is something that I always, that creates for me the natural feeling of appreciation for the devotees. If I can see the, like, how to say, like natural absorption in Krishna-katha, like something like if you meet the devotees and you can see that they really like to be absorbed, they always prefer Krishna-katha over the mundane topics. But I wonder, with the introspection, I'm asking, like, considering my situation, I'm definitely not free from the attraction for the mundane topics. Even you know, like, for me, the mundane music before I joined the movement was like, that was my life. And still, if I hear something of my likings, you know, like jazz music, whatever, I don't have to specify, something to my conditional likings, I still feel attracted to it. And I can't really say that I certain person avoid it. It happens that I listen to it. And then my dilemma is like, what's the real magic behind getting freed from these hunters and achieve this level of natural absorption in like pure spiritual topics?
Well, first of all, we have to practice, and we have to contemplate in our mind, and we should understand intellectually. Maybe we still have some attachment. I also, like a lot of devotees, I also was attached to a lot of mundane music and things before I joined. And I just personally just cut it completely, because I knew it would just be really hard for me if I heard those things. So I just stopped it. Maybe we can't always stop it right away. Some things continue on, and Krishna speaks about that in the 11th canto of the Bhagavatam. But then at least we should practice something, at least, and if we can't even practice, at least we should know in my mind, no, this is not good, and we should hear this katha. Narottam Das Thakur saying Chada Anya Gita Rag, that we should leave all these other different songs and things. So that process of leaving, it may be a process, and it begins intellectually when I understand that this is not wanted. Some devotees, honestly, they don't even understand that. And it's just, you know, it's the same for them. They want to have Beatles songs with Hare Krishna and whatever, and they think that's just fine. That's okay for them. Let them do like that. But if we want to go deeper, Narottam Das Thakur is giving us some instructions. We're going to start hearing a lot of very, very esoteric things in Prema-bhakti-candrika. This is a foundation for it. And he's giving us these things. If we look at them as restrictions, that sounds kind of a bit of a bummer. But they're not restrictions. They're actually, he's trying to help us. Srila Prabhupada, the four regulated principles, they sometimes call them the regulated principles of freedom. It's not that Srila Prabhupada is trying to burden us and control us and tell us, no, you can't have a girlfriend, no, you can't smoke marijuana, you can't do this thing or that thing. But actually, Srila Prabhupada is trying to help us to become free from those things. And so we begin like that. And Krishna consciousness is not like Western Christianity, where people are so full of rules and regulations and hatred, and we don't like this person, and you have to do like this and that. We understand things in a general way from our acharyas, and we try to imbibe that. And we pray to Krishna. Oh, I have so many attachments, and there's so many different prayers given also by our acharyas that I know I shouldn't be attached to this, but I am really attached to this thing, and please take this away from me. And the 7th canto of the Bhagavatam, what is that prayer to Lord Nrsimhadev that Prahlad Maharaj prays? He says that Yadida Shasi may come on. They recite that every day in Lubrajadam here in Hungary. Yadida Shasi may come on. Vadam Stvam Vadadarsha Bakamanam Hridya Samloham Bhavatastu Vinayavadam. That, oh my Lord, best of the givers of benediction, if you really want to give me a desirable benediction, then I pray to your Lordship that within the core of my heart there be no material desires. So that may be mechanical, that prayer, but at least philosophically we should start understanding it and why that's important, why that's helpful for us. Is that useful something, Prabhuji? Not so satisfying. So,
because that would be, I would tell you on it that I understand it, maybe I would dare to say, for a long time on the intellectual level, but still I'm hunted with that like liking for it. That's maybe my concern, like because it would be easy for me to go with that logic, like go with the higher taste. And if we would discuss that point, how do I process it, like inside me? I definitely have the higher taste for Krishna-katha, for Krishna conscious topics. Definitely, I spend many hours a day listening Krishna-katha because my engagement in Damodara allows it. So I always listen to lectures to Krishna-katha and but why do I still why do I still have the likings for the other side also? Why there is not this like that it's consumed, you know, this taste for the mundane sphere? Why is it not consumed by the
isn't that, first of all, isn't that pretty much all of us, especially in the West? It's so very hard. We have so many bad habits and attractions and things, but we just practice. We just be steady that I'm never going to give up. And you must know these two verses, 11, 20, 27,
yeah,
27,
28. Yeah, sure.
Well, Bhaktivinoda actually in Bhajan Rahasya, which is kind of the postgraduate study of Harinam Chintamani, he says these two verses describe adhikar for chanting Krishna Nam. I always loved that.
Yeah.
What the verses are talking about, for those of you who don't know these verses, about how someone has jata shadama katasu, that they've awakened some faith in Krishna-katha, but nirvina sarvakamisu, they can't give it up. They can't give up sense gratification. Even though veda dukatmakam kama, they know it's bad for me. They can't give it up. So what should they do? Krishna says you should just go on worshiping me and never give that thing up. And that's a kind of love. That's what can we do? That's what we're in. And then we cry bitterly, oh my dear Lord, I'm so fallen, I'm so attached to this thing and this thing, and I'm so very, very far away. If Krishna made it all easy and there was no attachment to songs and things like that, you might think, wow, I'm like almost a Paramahamsa.
What I'm so amazed about these two verses is understanding that it's Krishna saying it. When I realized that, because if you just take those verses out, it's like, okay, nice verses, makes sense, good. But then at one point I exactly remember that time when I realized, hey, wait a minute, it's Krishna telling this to Uddhava. Meaning, like for me, it created a feeling like Krishna knows that we are going through these struggles. It's not something that we pretend that, oh, look, Krishna, I'm this pure. No, Krishna knows that sadhaka goes through these stages, and he's like expressing how is it for him, you know, like I know about it, And I advise you to process it like this, with this attitude, with this endeavor, with these steps. That's so hope-giving to me, actually, on these two verses. Actually, it's so nice to know that Krishna knows our struggles.
Jiva Goswami takes it a step further in Bhakti-sandarbha. He says that there's two types of bhakti, sakaitava and akaitava, with a cheating mentality and without. And basically the difference is that akaitava, without kaitava, without cheating, that kind of bhakti is bhakti where we're honest. And we're praying to Krishna that I've got this desire and that desire. And in other ways, we see devotees that they come before the Lord and they pray, my Lord, I want Krishna Prema. I want Nikunja Seva because I read in Sri Prabhupada's book that I should want this thing. Therefore, I'm praying like this. But it's not really what I really want. Really, I'd like a red bicycle, you know, or whatever little toy it is.
Thank you.
Tony Thakur posted this nice verse in Manasiksha, verse 5. Lust, anger, and so on are a band of dacoits who sail one suddenly on the open path, open road of material life. They have bound my neck licentiously with the torturous, dreadful ropes of wicked deeds, and it does kill me.
We're missing the positive part of the solution. You suggested only the frustrating part of the verse.
One thing I like very much about Krishna consciousness, everything's positive. Everything's positive. And even when there's problems and things, we deal with it in a positive way. When Mahaprabhu, we were speaking in our last session, when Mahaprabhu was chastising Vallabhabhata, how did he chastise him? The first thing he did was he said, well, there's all these devotees you should meet. and by introducing him to the followers of Mahaprabhu, Vallabhabhata suddenly felt like he was about this big. And Mahaprabhu smashed his pride. And then again, Vallabha came to him on another occasion and said, I have this commentary, I'd like to explain about the Maha Mantra, I'd like to share it. And Mahaprabhu, so humble, said, I don't understand anything about the Bhagavatam. I don't know the Bhagavatam. I don't understand the Maha Mantra. I don't understand Krishna is God, and he's the son of Mother Yashoda, and that's all that I know about that. And that was the way in such a positive way, in such a humble way. And rather, we want to go in and beat people up and smash them and bash them. I'm not very much attracted by that. I really, for me, I stay away from a lot of people, like the angry people, a lot of conservative people. There's a lot of things I agree with the conservatives. Like the conservatives in America, they hate the blacks and they hate the Hare Krishnas and they hate the this ones and they hate the. And anybody who hates people, I just check out. And not because I necessarily like the groups that they hate. But we shouldn't be hating anybody, especially as devotees.
Yeah.
All right, so we'll go ahead and stop there. So let's discuss something about our timing for next week in the chat. Something. Let everybody go. This is Jagannath who demands mango sometimes. Oh, that's him. Well, thank you, Natalia. Let's put him on the screen. There he is. We printed that story in our magazine, Mahaprasad. For those of you who don't remember, you can look in the magazine. Or if somebody's really eager, they can ask me. They can paste the story in. Jai Jagannath. I hope he's getting his mangoes. Nice temple. Visited there. Okay. Thank you, Natalia. Everything's spinning on, I'm getting dizzy. Okay. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Samaveda Bhaktivinoda ki jai. Gaur Premanandi.
Madan Prabhu ki jai. Hare Krishna Prabhu.
Shakrita Sindhu